You wander into the castle courtyard as the last rays of the sun fade, expecting grandeur, banners, and maybe a roaring hearth waiting to welcome you. Instead, cold stone towers over you, the walls damp and breathing out an ancient chill. Morse creeps between the cobblestones under your boots, and the smell damp wool, horse sweat, and yesterday's fire smoke hangs heavy in the air. Hey guys, tonight we're stepping into the not-so-magical reality of a medieval fortress, and if you think you'd last until morning, well, you probably won't survive this. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. At first glance, the castle feels romantic, almost storybook. You imagine knights clanking down stone staircases, lords feasting in great halls, and maybe a bard or two playing in the background. But those stories left out the draft that cuts through your cloak like a knife. They didn't tell you about the smell of wet straw or the way the wind moans through arrow slits, whispering promises that tonight will be long. Scholars still argue whether castles were designed more for living or simply for war. But one thing is certain, comfort was never the point. You shuffle forward, guided by flickering torches that spit resin-scented smoke into your face. Servants hurry past without looking at you, their shoulders hunched, their steps silent. Somewhere above, a wooden shutter bangs in the wind. Somewhere deeper, a dog barks, then yelps, then goes quiet. The walls themselves seem alive, exhaling centuries of damp air against your cheeks. It's not just the architecture that's unsettling. It's the knowledge that you're stepping into a world where safety was relative. Outside the gates lurk bandits and rival lords. Inside, the cold hierarchy is as sharp as the swords the guards wear. You're the outsider here, a stranger who doesn't know where to sleep, what to eat, or which stone step squeaks loud enough to wake someone important. A guard eyes you up and down as you enter the inner bailey, his mail shirt rattling softly. He doesn't nod, he doesn't smile. Instead, he spits into the mud, a silent reminder that you're not exactly welcome. And above him, on the battlements, a banner flaps against the night sky, tattered from countless storms. Your room, don't expect a guest suite. If you're lucky, you'll be offered a pallet of straw in a side chamber. If not, you'll curl up in a drafty hall, huddling near a fire that smokes more than it warms. Your modern mattress-loving back is about to revolt. And let's not forget the smell. There's no modern plumbing here. The scent of hearth stables, wet rushes, and chamber pots left too long fills the air. Somewhere nearby, dinner scraps rot in the corner, waiting for pigs or rats. Yes, rats.
They're bold, too. Expect them to scurry across your boots when you least want it. But you keep walking, because you've committed to the strange medieval sleepover. You pass a great hall where a few servants are clearing wooden trenchers from the Lord's meal. Bits of mutton, fat, and spilled ale glisten in the torchlight. The floor is layered with rushes, straw, herbs, and whatever was swept in weeks ago, and it smells complicated. Think hay, mold, sweat, and roasted meat, all tangled together. You glance at a long table scarred by years of knives and spilled wine. Above it, the rafters vanish into shadows that feel alive. Somewhere up there, bird, maybe a sparrow flutters. Castles weren't sealed tight. Creatures made themselves at home. Fleas, mites, spiders. You'll meet them soon enough. And just as you're thinking maybe this isn't so bad, a gust of icy air snakes down the hall and across your neck. No central heating, no glass windows, just arrow slits and shutters that don't quite fit. The temperature drops fast, and you pull your cloak tighter, wishing for a modern hoodie. Still, there's a thrill to it. You're standing where history happened. You imagine the echo of boots, the whisper of conspiracies that once decided fates. Maybe someone plotted a rebellion right here. Maybe a ghost or two lingers. Oddly enough, people back then loved telling tales of wandering spirits, a way to keep each other wary after dark. You'll hear them tonight if you're not careful. But for now, you keep your eyes open, adjusting to the dim torchlight, the smell, the cold. You're here to survive a single night, right? Just one. easy, except it's already clear that medieval comfort doesn't exist. This place was built for defense, not dreams. It's stone and iron and fear disguised as power. If you're still confident, hang on. The night hasn't even started. The cold will deepen, the vermin will wake, and somewhere out there, a drunk knight might stumble toward you looking for a fight or a story. You're just beginning this sleepless historical adventure, and trust me, the first chill is only a warning. You pull your borrowed cloak tighter and wander deeper into the fortress. The night is young, but the cold here has its own personality. It doesn't just sting, it seeps, creeping through the seams of your clothes and sliding down your spine like an unwelcome hand. You're standing inside walls that could survive a siege, but they do nothing to keep out the winter air. This isn't a cozy stone cottage. It's a giant refrigerator built centuries before central heating. The great hall you passed earlier looked promising with its fire blazing in the middle, but that warmth doesn't travel far. The flames lick upward, but most of the heat escapes through a hole in the roof or drifts into the smoky rafters. Down here, your breath fogs in front of your face. Your toes? They're already numb. And don't think you'll just grab another blanket. Wool is precious. If you were a high-ranking guest, you might get a heavy fur throw, something that smells faintly of the animal it once belonged to. But as an outsider, you'll be lucky to snag a single scratchy blanket, thin enough to make you question its purpose. Sleeping near the hearth might seem smart until you realize the smoke chokes more than it warms. There's a reason people in this era wore layers upon layers. Linen undergarments, wool tunics, cloaks, sometimes even a hood indoors. You don't have all that, do you? You'll shiver in your modern jeans and hoodie while locals roll their eyes. The stone walls radiate a kind of cold that doesn't leave, even in summer nights. Imagine a medieval fridge designed by someone who hated comfort. The draft comes from everywhere. Arrow slits gape like toothless mouths, letting in the wind. Shutters don't fit right. They're warped from rain and years of neglect. Every gust pushes through and flutters the rushes on the floor. That soft background hum you thought you heard? It's the castle sighing as cold air moves through hallways like invisible ghosts. Your sleeping spot, by the way, isn't a heated bedchamber. It's likely a corner near servants, maybe under a leaky roof beam, if you're unlucky. The idea of curling up and drifting off? Forget it. The second you close your eyes, the cold will prod you awake again, whispering that survival comes first. Medieval people often slept fully dressed, boots and all, because taking off clothes meant waking up freezing. So, yes, tonight, you'll sleep with your shoes on, assuming you can sleep at all. And then there's the damp. The stone doesn't just hold cold. It drinks in moisture from rain and mist, releasing it slowly until the whole place feels clammy. You'll smell it, that wet mineral scent mixed with old smoke. Your cloak gets heavy. Your hair starts to curl with humidity. If you're unlucky, you'll wake up to droplets clinging to the ceiling above you, forming tiny beads that fall onto your face at 3 in the morning. Remember when you imagined a roaring medieval fireplace? Cute idea. Most private chambers didn't have one. Even nobles complained of icy drafts despite hanging tapestries and furs on the walls. Scholars still argue whether tapestries were more decorative or actually practical for insulation, but either way, they weren't magical warmers. The cold was part of life, accepted, endured, sometimes fatal. And here's the kicker: smoke. Without chimneys as we know them today, fires vent upward through a crude hole in the roof, or just fill the room until it's barely breathable. Your eyes water, your throat itches, and yet your toes stay numb. Welcome to medieval climate control. Choke or freeze. Every creak of wood echoes louder in the cold air. The castle doesn't feel dead. It feels watchful. You imagine guards pacing the battlements above, wrapped in furs, stamping their feet to keep blood. Somewhere, a stable boy curses while hauling icy water to the horses. Somewhere else, a woman coughs in her straw bed, the sound sharp and hollow. This isn't just uncomfortable, it's dangerous. Cold meant sickness, pneumonia, chills, fevers. No modern medicine to rescue you if you got too cold tonight. A deep freeze could mean death, and people knew it. They layered, they huddled, they kept animals nearby just for warmth. That's right, you might end up sharing your sleeping spot with a goat or two. Surprise! New roommate. Odd detail. Sometimes people literally slept on platforms over the animals' stables, so the rising heat from livestock could warm them. Romantic, right? Nothing says castle luxury like snuggling under a scratchy blanket while cows breathe beneath you. And if you think you'll get used to it by morning, probably not. Sleep deprivation in this cold is real. Your body will keep waking you just to shiver hard enough to create a little heat. You'll toss, you'll curl tighter, and you'll start bargaining with the medieval gods for sunrise. So, yeah, your first big challenge in this fortress isn't dragons or sword fights, it's staying warm long enough to close your eyes without freezing. The stone walls don't care about your comfort. They were built to hold off armies, not keep you cozy. And the night is just getting colder. You finally find a corner that feels slightly less drafty and think, maybe now I can settle down. Bad news. You're about to meet your new roommates. They don't pay rent. They don't respect personal space. And they've been here for centuries. First, the rats. They rule this place after dark. You hear them before you see them. Soft scratching along the walls. Tiny claws on stone. One bold rat darts across the rushes right in front of you, tail snaking like a tiny whip. Medieval castles stored grain, dried meats, and scraps from feasts. Rats feasted too. Guards? Too busy. Cats? Overwhelmed. You'll soon realize why people in paintings often wore long robes, not fashion, just defense against sudden ankle ambushes. Then the fleas. Oh, yes, the fleas. Those straw pallets you thought looked inviting? They're flea hotels. People rarely changed bedding. Rushes on the floor were swapped only a few times a year, if that. Fleas thrive in that warm mess of straw, crumbs, and old herbs. You lie down, and within minutes, you'll feel them tiny pricks, like invisible needles. Back then, people considered this normal. You? Not so much. And bedbugs? Well, congratulations. You've just met the medieval sleep tax. These little creatures hide in wood cracks, emerging only when you're still. Imagine lying there, trying to sleep, when something crawls up your sleeve. You jerk awake, but the castle doesn't care. Everyone scratches, even lords. In fact, some historians think the constant itching might have helped spread certain fevers. The smell doesn't help. Straw mixed with damp fur, unwashed bodies, and a faint metallic. There's no Lysol wipe in sight. You pull your cloak tighter, but the itch finds its way through. Somewhere in the dark, a servant slaps at their arm, curses softly, and goes back to sleep because this is just life. You think maybe a cat will come save you. There are cats, sleek, half wild, eyes glowing in torchlight, but they're busy catching mice, not protecting you. In fact, one might walk across your blanket in the middle of the night, tail flicking your face like an insult. Oddly enough, some castles deliberately spread herbs, lavender, rosemary, mint on the floor rushes to keep pests at bay. It helped a little, but mostly just added a faint, deceptive freshness over the underlying stench. If you're lucky, tonight's floor has some mint. If not, welcome to OD Medieval. And let's talk about lice. Yes, lice. Everyone had them. Noble, peasant, didn't matter. Combs existed, sure, but hot water baths were rare. You'll feel the crawl eventually, and there's no escape but scratching and hoping. Scholars still argue whether medieval people were truly indifferent to lice or just resigned because nothing worked. Either way, they're here, and they love newcomers. Every sound becomes suspect now. That quiet rustle could be a rat. That faint tickle, probably fleas. That cold brush on your hand, maybe just straw. Or maybe a beetle. You pull the blanket higher, trying to create a safe bubble, but deep down, you know, there's no real barrier here. Meanwhile, from somewhere in the darkness comes the soft squeal of pigs in an outer yard. Why pigs? Because garbage disposal back then meant tossing scraps to animals. The smell wafts in sweet, sour, rancid. It mixes with smoke, damp wool, and the unmistakable musk of too many humans sharing one space. You start to wonder how anyone ever slept here. Truth? They just got used to it. Your body might too, after weeks. But tonight, no chance. The scratching, the tiny bites, the scuttling feet. They keep your mind buzzing. Every rustle sounds like danger. You're hyper-aware, and sleep drifts further away. And here's the dark joke. This isn't even a bad castle night. This is normal. No siege. No plague carts outside the gate. No outbreak of fire yet. Just a calm evening with your unwelcome bedfellows. If you thought you probably won't survive this with sarcasm, wait until the next few hours of itching and sleepless panic set in. Your stomach growls, and for a fleeting moment, you imagine some grand medieval feast. Golden roasted birds, fresh bread, sweet pastries. Reality arrives on a wooden trencher, and it's not Instagram worthy. The first thing to know, food here is survival, not comfort. The bread? Dark, dense, often stale. It might be studded with grains. You don't recognize some harmless, some not. Peasants often ate maslin, bread mixed with whatever flour was available. Sometimes even ground beans or acorns when grain ran low. Bite it, and your teeth feel it. Gritty, slightly sour, and dry. Then there's the meat. You see a slab of something greasy, shiny under torchlight. It might be pork, mutton, or whatever was available. Salted or smoked months ago, revived by boiling today. It smells powerful. Think sweaty ham meets damp smoke. Sometimes spices help, sometimes not. And if you're not a noble, you're probably getting the less glamorous cuts, tough, chewy, with occasional bone shards that make you flinch mid-bite. The water? Don't even try it. Medieval water is a microbial gamble. You'll lose. Everyone knows this. So the safe option is ale, weak, cloudy, and warm, but at least less likely to kill you. You sip it slowly, but it doesn't taste refreshing. It's more like wet bread. And if you hate alcohol, too bad. Vegetables appear. Sometimes, onions, leeks, maybe some turnips or cabbage that's been cooked until it's a limp, gray-green mess. Fresh greens, rare and mostly seasonal. Fruits, only if the Lord's table had extra. You might spot apples shriveling in storage, or dried figs imported for the wealthy. Oh, and food safety? Not a thing. That stew you're eyeing could have been simmering for days. A cauldron, where yesterday's leftovers mix with today's additions. People believed boiling killed danger. Sometimes it worked. Sometimes you'd spend the next day regretting every bite. You suddenly appreciate your fridge back home. Oddly, spices like pepper or cinnamon were prized luxuries. Imported. Expensive. Status symbols. If tonight's potluck has even a hint of them, it's a rare treat. But most likely, you're tasting salt, onions, and smoke. Lots of smoke. You think about dessert? Maybe a sweet pastry? Nope. If you're lucky, you might get a simple honey cake or dried fruit. But most people ended meals with more bread and maybe cheese. Speaking of cheese, it's hard, sharp, and older than your patience. No creamy brie here, just a dense block that could double as a weapon. The oddest part, everyone eats with fingers or shared knives. Spoons exist, but aren't personal. Forks haven't really caught on yet. The table manners? Sloppy by modern standards. People wipe greasy hands on tunics, toss bones to the floor for dogs or pigs, and burp without apology. You're trying to be polite, but honestly, the smell alone might kill your appetite. If you're in the Great Hall, you'll hear it all: loud chewing, laughing, arguing. Somewhere, someone coughs a deep, wet sound right over the communal pot. Another guy sneezes without covering his mouth. And remember, no soap. Suddenly, that chewy bread looks like the safest option. But there's an even darker twist. Famine wasn't rare. Food could be scarce, especially in winter or after bad harvests. People stretched meals with whatever they could. Bark flour, spoiled grain, or questionable meat. Some historians mention ergot poisoning, caused by a fungus in damp rye bread. It made people hallucinate or even die. Tonight's loaf, you hope it's clean. Scholars still argue whether some outbreak of dancing plague were just mass ergot poisoning. Comforting, right? You choke down what you can because hunger wins. The ale dulls the taste slightly, but as you eat, you notice movement on the rush-covered floor where it's again boldly stealing crumbs. No one reacts. This is normal. Even the dogs ignore them now. You glance up at a noble's table. They're eating better. Roast fowl. More spices. Maybe fresh fruit. But even their food isn't exactly clean or safe. Everyone here knows someone who died from bad meat or spoiled stew. Survival means eating fast, not asking questions. So here you sit, chewing hard bread and smoky meat, sipping warm ale, wondering how on earth anyone called this a feast. Your modern stomach is nervous, your palate confused. And yet, this is luxury compared to peasants outside the castle walls tonight. By the time you finish, you're not satisfied. You're simply not hungry anymore, and you're a little worried about what the night will bring once this questionable dinner starts settling in your gut. Medieval indigestion plus flea bites plus freezing drafts, a perfect recipe for insomnia. But hey, at least you didn't drink the water. That might have ended the story right here. You think dinner was rough? Wait until nature calls. In the 21st century, you just wander to a clean, lit bathroom. In this castle, the phrase, toilets, think again, isn't a joke, it's survival advice. The most basic option is the chamber pot, a ceramic or metal bucket tucked under benches or beside straw pallets. Everyone uses it. Everyone, men, women, children. In the dark, quietly, and when it's full, someone, probably a servant, hauls it outside or dumps it into the moat. Until then, it just sits there. The smell blends with everything else. Smoke, sweat, wet straw. You'll smell it the moment you pull back your blanket. If you're slightly luckier or brave enough to wander, there's the garderobe. Think of it as a medieval outhouse built into the castle wall. It's a narrow stone room with a wooden plank across a hole. That hole drops way straight down the outer wall, sometimes into a cesspit, sometimes into open air. Romantic, right? Step carefully. The wood can be slick, the air damp and foul. Cold night, wind blows up from below, carrying, well, you can imagine. You'll also have to bring your own toilet paper. Spoiler, there isn't any. Rags, moss, hey, maybe a smooth stick if you're resourceful. Nobles sometimes used bits of linen. You? Probably moss. Congratulations, welcome to medieval hygiene. And it's dark. There's no lantern waiting for you. You navigate by torchlight or whatever. Moon slips through cracks. Imagine walking those icy, uneven stone halls half asleep, with rats darting ahead and fleas already feasting on your ankles, just so you can balance over a freezing hole in the wall. If the wind gusts, well, good luck keeping your cloak clean. People sometimes just chose not to risk the trip. They used chamber. The smell grew heavier as hours passed. You're breathing that in right now, mixing with the smoke from torches and the sour tang of yesterday's ale. No wonder people stuffed herbs in their sleeping quarters. Rosemary, mint, thyme, not because it was fancy, but to mask this stench. Here's an odd but true detail. Garderobes were sometimes placed near the warmest parts of the castle walls to keep waste from freezing. Solid. Nice for winter plumbing. Horrible for anyone nearby, because it made the whole tower smell like, well, medieval life. Some builders even believed the ammonia from waste helped keep moths away from stored clothing. So yes, you're sleeping next to a functional moth deterrent / sewer. And then there's the safety factor. Castles could be dangerous after dark. Wandering to a distant latrine means passing armed guards, drunk servants, or maybe a suspicious knight who thinks you're sneaking around. You're outsider here, every shadow could be trouble. You might decide it's better to stay put and risk the chamber pot. Health risk? Huge. Poor sanitation spread disease fast. Dysentery, cholera-like illnesses, parasites. One bad garderobe could infect dozens. Scholars still argue how much castle plumbing actually improved health. Evidence suggests not much. People just accepted constant stomach trouble as normal. And oh, no hand-washing station. Maybe a bowl of water if you're noble. Soap is rare and expensive. Mostly, people just wiped hands on clothes or hay and got back to eating or sleeping. Suddenly, your questionable dinner feels even more questionable. So now, you're faced with a choice. Stay put with the chamber pot and breathe the growing stink. Brave the cold to squat over a hole in the outer wall while wind chills your bones. Hope you don't run into trouble in the dark corridors. Either way, comfort is a dream. Privacy? Forget it. And yes, that scratching sound near the pot. Probably rats checking for leftovers. Don't panic, this is just medieval normal. You try to laugh about it, the absurdity of calling this a castle experience, but as the cold creeps deeper and the stink grows stronger, it's harder to smile. Your modern brain is screaming for clean tiles and a flush handle. You settle back onto your straw pallet, hoping you won't need to get up again until morning. But your stomach, after that sketchy stew, it might have other plans. You shift on the straw, trying to get comfortable, when a sound echoes down the corridor. The slow, hollow clank of metal on stone. Someone's walking in armor. Instantly, you remember another unpleasant truth about life here. Knights didn't lounge around in polished suits just for portraits. When trouble stirred, they wore their gear, and it was heavy. Really heavy. Armor looks heroic in movies, but in reality, it's a medieval torture device you strap to yourself. Chainmail alone can weigh 20 to 30 kilos. That's like sleeping with a small person sitting on your shoulders. Over it, a knight-mitered plate pieces breastplate, greaves, gauntlets adding another 15-20 kilos. Try climbing stairs like that. You think your backpack is heavy? Imagine metal boots dragging across cold stone, while your shoulders ache and your breath steams in the icy night air. You peek through the doorway and spot a guard shifting his weight, trying to keep warm. He's wearing a mail hauberk that swings and jingles with every move. Over it is a quilted gambeson, basically a padded jacket stuffed with wool or horsehair meant to soften blows and keep the mail from cutting into his skin. Even so, you can tell by the way he rolls his shoulders that it hurts. The gambeson is stiff, sweaty, and smells like wet dog left in a basement. Armor doesn't just ache, it's slow. Once it's on, you're clumsy. Bending down is a negotiation. Sitting? Awkward. Sleeping? Forget it. Some knights supposedly slept in partial armor during tense times, because getting dressed took so long. Imagine trying to rest while wearing 30 kilos of metal, every breath echoing against your helmet. It's like trying to nap in a car with the seatbelt locked. Too tight but colder and louder. Oddly enough, the armor doesn't make you invincible. A blunt strike can still crack ribs or knock you flat. And there's chafing, so much chafing. Leather straps dig into shoulders. Mail pinches hair. Metal edges bruise. Your modern gym complaint of, "This backpack hurts," seems laughable now. And then there's the smell. Armor plus sweat, plus no showers, equals a funk so powerful it probably scared away small animals. In fact, some historians think part of a knight's intimidating presence came from sheer odor. Tonight, that clanking you hear is also accompanied by a metallic tang mixed with human musk that's impressive. But here's the twist, armor wasn't just for battle. Guards were pieces at night to deter intruders or raiders. It also kept them warm, oddly enough. Cold metal isn't cozy, but the padding underneath traps some heat. You, meanwhile, are shivering in a thin cloak, while a guard above you clanks around, layered like a medieval tank. Scholars still argue whether full plate was as restrictive as legends say. Some tests show it was surprisingly mobile, but everyone agrees it was exhausting to wear for hours. Your body would ache, your shoulders burn, your hips bruise. The romantic image of dashing knights fades quickly when you imagine trying to climb a ladder while sweating, freezing, and itching under 50 pounds of steel. And what if you, the outsider, had to gear up tonight? Not likely, but if trouble came, raiders, rival lords, some midnight brawl, someone might toss you a rusty helmet and say, good luck indeed. You'd struggle just to lift a sword while balancing in this metal shell. Meanwhile, trained fighters would crush you without breaking stride. There's also no such thing as personal space. These halls are narrow. Guards brush past you, mail scraping. Sparks sometimes fly when metal hits walls. You flinch every time, partly from the noise, partly because every clank reminds you this place expects violence. It's unsettling trying to sleep when footsteps echo with the sound of battle gear. An odd little detail. Knights and guards often hung their armor near their sleeping spots, like some nightmarish coat rack. So you might wake in the dark, see a shadowy figure with a helmet and sword looming, and nearly panic only to realize it's just a breastplate on a peg. Medieval life was not designed for nervous modern brains. All this metal and preparation also means tension. Castles weren't peaceful, they were ready for attack. That readiness seeps into the air. Guards pace, gear rattles, dogs bark in the distance. You feel like you're camping in an armed fortress rather than visiting a cozy home, which, of course, you are. So here you are, freezing, itchy, hungry, and now fully aware that everyone around you is armored, and a little on edge. You're trying to rest, but every metallic creak tells you the night could turn dangerous at any moment. You pull your blanket tighter, but it doesn't muffle the sound of swords shifting in the dark. You probably won't survive this, at least not without waking up sore, paranoid, and wondering why you ever romanticized castles in the first place. You lie back on the straw, trying to ignore the cold, the fleas, and the distant clank of armor. But now another truth about castle life creeps in. Danger doesn't always come from swords or storms. It comes from people. The walls around you were built to keep armies out, but inside, power plays, whispered schemes, and quiet betrayals thrive. Welcome to the court, where one wrong word can ruin your night or your life. The medieval castle isn't just a home. It's a political pressure cooker. Lords, ladies, knights, stewards, priests all locked together in this stone maze, competing for influence. You're the outsider here, which means you don't know the hidden alliances or the grudges that have been festering for years. You might accidentally sit in the wrong place, speak to the wrong person, or heaven forbid offend the Lord's favorite hound. And trust me, you will be noticed. Dinner earlier? That wasn't just eating. It was power theater. Who sits closest to the Lord matters. Who gets the best cut of meat matters. Who's allowed to speak matters. You, the stranger, were probably ignored. Lucky you. But even being overlooked can draw suspicion. Who is that? Why are they here? A single glance from the wrong noble could have consequences. And poison, yes. Poison isn't just a fairy tale device. Subtle assassinations happen, especially in courts where inheritance or favor was at stake. Cups of wine, bowls of stew, even herbs rubbed on clothing could turn deadly. You sip your ale and hope nobody saw you accept it from the wrong jug. Scholars still argue how common poisoning actually was, but enough. It's not just death that lurks. Humiliation does too. Speak out of turn, ask an ignorant question, or laugh at the wrong joke, and you could be marked as a fool. In a castle, reputations are currency. You don't have any, which means one whisper can make you an easy target. Servants gossip constantly. They know who's rising, who's falling, who's been caught sneaking where they shouldn't. You're tonight's newest rumor. And let's talk about betrayal. Even loyal-looking faces can hide knives. Politics here isn't about honesty. It's about survival. That quiet steward who nodded at you earlier, he might be feeding information to a rival lord. That knight leaning on his sword, he's loyal until someone offers better pay or a land grant. You're sleeping in a place where allegiances shift faster than torchlight on stone. Oddly enough, the architecture reflects this paranoia. Some castles had secret passages, hidden doors, and murder holes. Yes, murder holes for dropping rocks or boiling oil on intruders. You might unknowingly be sleeping near one right now. Imagine drifting off, only to hear footsteps inside the walls. Medieval design wasn't about comfort. It was about outsmarting enemies, including the ones already inside. The air feels charged, even in stillness. Conversations stop when you approach. Servants glance over shoulders before speaking. Somewhere in a nearby chamber, someone laughs sharp, brief, then cuts off as if remembering something dangerous. A dog growls in the dark and is shushed. You sense it now. You're not just cold and itchy. You're being watched, and you're vulnerable. No allies, no weapons, no understanding of who's in charge beyond the Lord. At dinner, if an ambitious knight decided you'd make a useful scapegoat, you'd have no defense. Medieval justice was swift and brutal, sometimes just the Lord's word. No lawyers, no fair trial, just accusation and punishment. And punishment here isn't mild. You'll learn more about that later tonight. Here's a dark, cheeky thought. You probably won't survive this, not because of rats or cold, but because you'll accidentally smile at someone's spouse or drink from the wrong cup. or just be in the wrong corridor at the wrong time. Modern social awkwardness has nothing on medieval court politics. You try to shrink deeper into your scratchy blanket, hoping invisibility works. But invisibility is hard when you're unfamiliar. The castle notices outsiders. Everyone wants to know your business, and if they don't, they'll make one up. Somewhere, gossip about you is already starting. And it's not just the nobles. Servants have power too. Soft power. They know the secrets. They see who sneaks where. They can make your night easier or miserable. You didn't tip anyone, not that you could. That might have been a mistake. A torch sputters in the hallway, and shadows flicker across the cold stone. Somewhere deeper, two voices whisper fast and low, then silence, then footsteps retreating, then silence, then footsteps retreating. You hold your breath, realizing just how thin your safety really is. These walls keep out armies, but they can't keep you safe from the people within. You close your eyes and hope. No one needs a convenient scapegoat tonight. But hope feels fragile when power, greed, and survival swirl all around you. Sleep here isn't just uncomfortable, it's dangerous. You shift uneasily, trying to convince yourself the whispers outside your door are harmless. But another dread creeps in. What happens if you get sick tonight? A stomach cramp from that stew, a fever from the cold draft, or maybe just a scratch from some flea that turns ugly. In the 21st century, you'd shrug and call a doctor. Here, medicine is medieval. The castle has a resident healer of sorts, maybe a barber surgeon, maybe a monk with a book of herbs. Their toolkit is simple: knives, needles, leeches, and prayer. Actual science is scarce. Superstition rules. If you complain about stomach pain, someone might hand you a cup of ale infused with bitter herbs and hope it works. If that doesn't help, bloodletting is next. Yes, cutting you open or attaching hungry leeches, because the popular theory says bad humors must be drained. You can almost picture it. You're lying on a rough table in some damp corner room, torchlight flickering, while a man in stained linen mutters about balancing your bile. He ties a cloth tied around your arm, slices lightly with a dull blade, and waits for the blood to flow. You're supposed to feel better. Instead, you feel faint, cold, and terrified. Broken bone? Expect a splint made from whatever wood's nearby, maybe wrapped in wool. No anesthesia except strong ale or biting a stick. Infection? No one even knows what bacteria is. They'll smear honey, vinegar, or animal fat, hoping for the best. Sometimes it works, sometimes it means fever, delirium, death. Oddly enough, medieval people did have some effective remedies. Willow bark tea, primitive aspirin, garlic poultices for infection, honey to help wounds heal. But for every sensible cure, there's a nightmare one: ground mummy powder, crushed beetles, dried frog parts. Scholars still argue whether the so-called wise women were better healers than university-trained physicians of the time. Either way, you're the unlucky test subject tonight. And surgery? You don't want to know. Without sterile tools or pain relief, operations were last-ditch efforts. Amputation was done fast, with assistants holding you down while the surgeon sawed. People prayed to survive shock and blood loss. You can almost hear the echo of screams that these castle walls have heard countless times. Even small issues become dangerous. A toothache can kill, abscesses turn septic. A cough can mean pneumonia. A flea bite could bring plague. Your modern immune system is screaming for antibiotics that won't exist for centuries. You curl tighter, scratching one itchy spot and trying not to panic. The healer might also turn to astrology. Yes, really. Treatments were often scheduled according to the stars. You might hear someone murmur, "We can't bleed you under Mars, wait until the moon wanes." Comforting? Not exactly. Your life is being balanced on someone's reading of the night sky. And let's not forget prayer. Priests or monks might visit, murmuring Latin blessings, sprinkling holy water, or advising confession, because sometimes healing meant saving your soul, not your body. You're lying there, feverish, and someone tells you to repent while they wave incense. Hope you're spiritual. Hygiene makes everything worse. Dirty bedding, shared bowls, unwashed hands. Infection spreads like gossip. Remember those chamber pots and garderobes? They're disease highways. Dysentery, typhoid, worms, all thrive here. Your stomach growl earlier suddenly feels like a warning siren. And if you die, brutal but true, it's expected. People didn't live long. 30 seconds and 40 seconds were common lifespans. Children died young, and adults knew sickness could strike any night. No health insurance, no emergency room, just prayers and hope. Mortality was a roommate everyone knew by name. You probably won't survive this if you get really ill. And that thought alone keeps you awake. Every itch, every stomach gurgle feels ominous. You imagine a barber surgeon arriving with leeches while a priest whispers prayers and servants whisper gossip. That outsider won't last till morning. You pull the blanket tighter, trying to breathe slow, hoping your body doesn't betray you tonight. Because in this world, sickness isn't just miserable, it's often the end. You've somehow made it through the cold, the fleas, the bad food, the chamber pot dilemma, the tense politics, and the terrifying idea of medieval medicine. You lie down, willing yourself to finally sleep, but the castle has other plans. Now comes the soundscape of the Middle Ages, a restless symphony that makes silence feel like a luxury you'll never afford. First is the wind. It doesn't just whistle, it moans. The castle walls act like a giant pipe organ, catching gusts and turning them into low, hollow howls that roll through corridors and arrow slits. Every draft becomes a ghostly sigh. Sometimes it sounds like distant voices, sometimes like someone crying softly just outside your door. You pull the blanket over your ears, but the stone seems to vibrate with it. Then the guards. Their patrols echo through the night, boots on stone. The soft jingle of mail, the occasional muffled cough. You hear a sword scrape as someone adjusts a belt. Now and then, a guard bangs his spear on the floor, maybe to stay awake, maybe to warn rats. Each sound jolts you, because here every clang could mean trouble. From the bailey comes the restless life of animals. Horses stomp in their stalls, snorting clouds of white breath. Pigs grunt and shift in their pens. A dog barks suddenly sharp, urgent, then growls low before going quiet. Dogs were the medieval alarm system, always alert to strangers. Tonight, you are the stranger. And above, in the rafters, or beyond the roof, birds stir. Owls hoot in the distance. Sometimes bats flutter past, brushing against the torchlit halls. Their leathery wings make faint, rapid flaps that disappear into the dark. You'd think it's cool until one swoops close enough to make you flinch. Closer still is the drip of water. Somewhere, rain seeps through cracks, plinking onto stone in slow, irregular rhythms. It's not loud, but it's maddening drip. Drip, drip. It mixes with the faint scuttle of rats in the rushes, the tiny chew of teeth on wood. You tell yourself they're far away, but sometimes a whisker brushes your blanket and your heart lurches. And then there's human noise. A servant coughing in the next room, someone snoring like a dying trumpet, two lovers whispering and giggling behind a thin wall. Somewhere, faint crying, a child, maybe, or an adult fighting sickness. Life here doesn't stop just because you need sleep. Oddly, one of the loudest intrusions is bells. Castles often had chapel bells or watch bells that rang to mark hours, warn of fire, or call guards to duty. In the dead of night, a single toll can shatter the little rest you've built. One deep clang vibrates through the cold air, making you jolt upright, heart pounding. Scholars still argue whether medieval nights were truly silent, or just differently noisy, but most agree they weren't peaceful. People lived with sound, animals, wind, guards, work. Silence was rare, suspicious even. Here, quiet usually meant danger. You shift, trying to block it all out, but sound travels easily through stone, and without modern glass windows, every gust, bark, and distant conversation slides in unchecked. Even your own movements feel loud. A blanket rustle sounds like thunder. And then comes the one sound you dread most, chains. Somewhere deep below the dungeons, something clinks. Maybe it's just a guard adjusting a gate. Maybe it's a prisoner shifting in his bonds. The noise is faint but steady, metal against stone, slow and eerie. You try to convince yourself it's harmless, but imagination fills the dark with ghosts of forgotten prisoners. Finally, Just as your body starts to surrender, the roar of the great hall, fire flares, logs shift, sparks crackle, a sudden pop echoes. It's harmless, but jarring, and it fills the room with smoke that makes you cough awake again. Odd quirk: some castles used geese as living alarms. Their honks were louder than dogs. If tonight's fortress keeps geese, you'll know their screech will slice through any dream you manage to catch. So sleep doesn't come easily here. It's not one sound. It's all of them together, a living, breathing, restless stone beast. The castle doesn't want you to rest. It wants you alert, ready for whatever comes. You roll over, frustrated, and whisper to yourself, you probably won't survive this night. At least not. Just as your weary body begins to drift, your ears numbed to the wind and the rats, another hazard, creeps into your night. Fire. It sounds almost comforting at first. A little warmth, the soft crackle of burning logs. But in a medieval castle, fire isn't just cozy light. It's danger you sleep beside every single night. Candles and torches are the only light source. They're everywhere, wedged into iron brackets, sitting on wooden tables, clutched by sleepy servants, made from tallow, animal fat, or beeswax. If the Lord is rich, they burn with a soft hiss and a faint, greasy smell. Tallow especially stinks like meat left too close to the sun, and it drips. You wake to drops of hot wax spattering the floor, sometimes even a cloak sleeve. Open hearths blaze in great halls. They're majestic in paintings. In reality, they belch smoke and sparks. Without chimneys like we know today, much of that smoke curls into rafters and creeps down hallways. You cough, eyes stinging, trying to breathe shallow to avoid the worst of it. But there's no escape. Everything here smells faintly burned. And sparks? Sparks love straw. Straw is everywhere, on floors, in bedding, stuffed under benches. It's insulation and carpet all at once, and it's dry. One stray ember and the rushes can flare into fast-moving flame. Fires did happen. Whole wings of castles burned despite their stone walls, because roofs and interior supports were wood. Tonight, as you stare at the torch by your door, you can't help but picture what would happen if it tipped. Servants try to be careful, but they're human. Someone stumbles. A torch falls. A drunk knight passes out mid-ale. There are no smoke alarms, no sprinklers, no fire brigade, just frantic shouting and buckets. If water is nearby, sometimes it isn't. Medieval fire safety basically means pray. Oddly, many castles kept barrels of water or sand in halls, medieval fire stations of sorts, but they weren't always enough. The wind that moans through arrow slits can fan flames fast. Imagine trying to fight a blaze with buckets while wearing heavy wool and no shoes, because you woke up to heat licking at your palate. And the smell of fire isn't just smoke. It's old soot layered over centuries. Stone holds it, dark streaks up walls like scars. The air tastes faintly charred even on calm nights. Your blanket now carries a whisper of ash, because everything here does. Fire also means heat and cold in unfair doses. Too close to the hearth, you roast one side while your back freezes. Too far, you shiver. There's no sweet, even warmth, just sudden blasts followed by icy drafts. People here learn to rotate slowly like human spits, to warm each side before frostbite set in. You may think I'll just keep a candle by my bed for light. Bad idea. Beds catch fire. Clothes catch fire. Whole tapestries have gone up because someone dozed too close to an open flame. Stories abound of nobles dying mid-sleep when their draperies caught from a single can. Some people slept with small lanterns, but those were pricey and not much safer. Tallow lamps smoke heavily and spill easily. One wrong move and hot fat splashes everywhere. And in case you're wondering, medieval firefighting mostly involved screaming and throwing whatever liquid was nearby. Ale, slop, even chamber pot content sometimes went on flames. Yes, that chamber pot. Scholars still argue whether stone castles truly minimized fire risk compared to timber halls. But even here, interiors were flammable. Roof, trusses, stairs, furniture all wood. Rushes on floors were basically tinder. So when you lie awake tonight, remember, one spark could turn this safe fortress into a smoky trap, and the guards know it. You hear them stomp past occasionally, checking torches, snuffing or trimming wicks, adjusting hearths. The constant maintenance is part of nightlife. Fires weren't cozy, they were a threat that never went away. So you curl tighter, debating, stay cold and candleless, or risk a little light and warmth with the chance of waking to flames. Neither feels great. It's another reason sleep doesn't come easy here. You're half waiting for a crackle to turn into a roar. Odd detail, some lords kept fire dogs, iron supports shaped like animals, to hold logs steady and reduce rolling embers. They helped a bit, but not enough. Fire accidents were so frequent that some castles banned open candles in guest areas, a rule you wish existed here. So, as the night drags on, the flickering shadows aren't just creepy, they're dangerous. The warm glow you wanted is now a reminder that safety here is fragile. One small mistake, and this stone fortress could become your oven. You pull your blanket close, praying nothing tips, spills, or sputters too far. The wind moans. A torch pops loudly. Your heart jumps. Sleep slips further away. You've been fighting the cold, the fleas, the politics, the smoke, and the endless creaks of the castle when another kind of threat slides quietly into your thoughts. People who don't belong here. For all the high walls and guards, medieval castles were never impenetrable. Some of the scariest moments came not from siege engines, but from a knock, or no knock at all in the middle of the night. First are the raiders, rival lords, mercenaries, or even bandits sometimes tried quick strikes rather than full sieges. The goal wasn't to conquer, but to steal, burn, and vanish before dawn. Imagine, you're half asleep when the dogs outside erupt into frantic barking. Boots thunder on the drawbridge. A horn blasts once deep and low, then shouting begins. Steel rings on stone. Somewhere, a terrified servant bangs on your door, yelling for you to move now. Your sleepy body, it won't stand a chance. Even without a full raid, petty skirmishes could spill into the castle yard. Drunk men at arms brawl. A disgruntled knight tests boundaries. A visiting merchant refuses to pay a toll. Violence flares fast where swords hang everywhere. You're an unknown face, easy target, easy scapegoat. One wrong hallway, and you're shoved aside or worse. And then there's the Lord's enemies from within. Plots brew in the dark. Assassins slipping past guards. Rival claimants sneaking in via bribed servants. Or an insider opening a side gate. Some castles even had secret tunnels leading outside. Perfect for a midnight breach. You may never hear it coming until a door bursts open and strangers rush through with blades drawn. Oddly enough, drunken knights and squires can be more dangerous than actual raiders. They return from patrol with too much ale, itching to prove their toughness. An outsider sleeping in their space is an easy excuse for a fight. A shove, a laugh, a drawn dagger, and you're in way over your head. No police to call, no one sober enough to break it up. Guests themselves can be threats. Pilgrims, merchants, and wandering soldiers often stayed in castles if weather turned bad. Not everyone who shares your room tonight is trustworthy. Someone could steal your cloak, your food, even your life, if they think no one will notice. And in a place where everyone's armed with knives for eating anyway, conflict escalates fast. There's also wild animals. Yes, sometimes wolves or stray dogs got inside outer yards, if gates weren't well kept. Pigs and goats roam free at night, but they're harmless. A hungry wolf, not so much. Imagine hearing claws on the stone stairs outside your thin wooden door. Scholars still argue whether castles were truly safe refuges, or just slightly better than the wild. What's certain, safe, here is relative. You're protected from armies, maybe, but from small bands, thieves, or a drunk with a sword? Not always. Odd quirk. Some castles stationed a man whose sole night job was listening. Literally, he sat in the dark, ear to the ground or wall, trying to catch sounds of digging siege tunnels or sneaking footsteps. Tonight, as you lie awake, you wonder if anyone's doing that, or if everyone's too busy drinking by the fire. And what if trouble comes? There's no clear alarm for guests. Bells might ring, horns might sound, but then what? You don't know where to run, where the safe hall is, or how to avoid crossbow bolts whizzing through the dark. One wrong turn, and you're in the line of fire. Servants know the routes. You don't. You try to comfort yourself. The drawbridge is up. The guards are armed. The Lord surely paid them well. But loyalty wavers with coin, and desperation breeds betrayal. History's full of castles taken from within. Gates opened quietly after midnight. You roll over, hearing a distant creak that might just be wood, or might be someone unlatching something they shouldn't. And then there's the simple, intimate fear, a knock. Late-night knocks weren't friendly. They meant summons to the Lord, never good, bad news, or danger. If someone bangs on your door, do you open it? Or is it safer to pretend sleep and hope they move on? Either walla. So while you're trying to get a few hours of rest, the night hums with potential intrusions. Raiders, rivals, thieves, drunk knights, secret tunnels. The castle isn't a sealed box. It's a living chessboard full of pieces you don't control. One wrong move, and you're checkmated before morning. You probably won't survive this if trouble finds you, not because you're weak, but because you're alone and armed, and clueless about the rules here. And that thought keeps your eyes wide open as the torches flicker lower, and the hallways echo with every unpredictable sound. The hours drag, and just when you think you've adjusted to the drafts, the fleas, and the random clanking of guards, a different kind of presence slides into the night. Religion. In the Middle Ages, faith wasn't a quiet, private matter. It soaked into every crevice of castle life. Even as you try to sleep, the spiritual and the supernatural keep tugging you awake. It starts with the bells. You've already heard them mark hours and alarms, but now they toll for prayer. Somewhere inside the keep, or just beyond the walls, a small chapel calls the faithful with a single slow clang. It's not loud, but in the silent dark, it feels enormous. Monks or priests shuffle toward the chapel for matins, the midnight prayer, while you, the outsider, lie there hoping the sound will fade. But it doesn't. It lingers like a heartbeat. Faith here is powerful, but it's not gentle. Religion is protection, warning, and sometimes fear. Crosses hang in rooms, candles burn before saints, and priests mutter blessings at doorways to keep evil out. If you're not used to living surrounded by ritual, it's eerie. You can almost hear whispered Latin as someone walks past carrying incense to bless sleeping quarters. And then there's the ghost lore. People believed restless spirits haunted castles, dead soldiers, wronged servants, betrayed nobles. You've already felt the castle's strange breathing drafts. Now imagine hearing a hushed story about the White Lady who appears in this very hall. Medieval nights were dark, long, and full of tales meant to keep people cautious. A servant earlier might have warned you to stay away from certain staircases, because someone fell there and never left. You laugh nervously, but when the wind wails, it's harder to feel brave. Oddly enough, some lords deliberately encouraged ghost stories. Fear kept servants obedient and guests respectful. A whispered haunting was cheaper than paying extra guards, and everyone here seems to have a story. A moan heard from the dungeons, a light that flickers where no one should be. You're lying awake now, ears straining for any strange noise. The priests and monks themselves add to the unease. They're devoted but also deeply superstitious by modern standards. Astrology blends with scripture. Relics are displayed to ward off evil. A finger bone of a saint might sit in a gold case near the Great Hall. Touch it, they say, for protection. Tonight? And then there's the constant undercurrent of sin and judgment. Medieval religion wasn't shy about fear. Fire and brimstone sermons reminded everyone that death and hell could come suddenly, especially in dangerous places like castles. A priest might walk past your door, chanting prayers for souls lost in past battles. You think you hear the faint echo of Requiem, Aeternam Dona Eyes, drifting through the corridor. Comforting? Maybe. And settling? Definitely. Supernatural fear pairs well with the castle's architecture. The corridors are shadowed, ceilings high and echoing. Torchlight dances, turning carved saints into grim, watchful figures. Stained glass windows glow faintly if there's moonlight. You roll over and catch a glimpse of a saint's face staring down, solemn and silent. In this half-light, every shape can look alive. Scholars still argue whether medieval people genuinely believed every ghost story or used them as social control. Either way, the effect on you is the same. Heart racing, mind inventing footsteps behind you, imagining cold hands on your shoulder. You know it's probably just the draft, but try telling that to your half-asleep brain. Odd quirk. Some castles kept relic rooms or tiny chapels tucked deep inside walls. Servants swore those places hummed with strange energy at night. If you accidentally wandered near one, you might feel a sudden chill, and maybe hear prayers being whispered even when the room is empty. Superstitious or not, you decide. You're not exploring tonight. Religion also shapes daily routine. Even as you're trying to sleep, people around you rise for prayers, confess sins, or light candles for protection. The whole castle seems to breathe in rhythm with the church's schedule. You, an outsider, feel out of sync, like a radio tuned slightly off. Bells call, murmurs echo, and you stay still, unsure if you should join or stay hidden. And if you're a different faith or not religious at all, things could be worse. Suspicion could follow you, especially if something unlucky happens tonight. A failed fire, a sudden sickness, a strange noise. Someone might whisper outsider and curse in the same sentence. Fear is a powerful social tool here. So as the night deepens, the castle isn't just noisy, it's spiritually alive. Bells toll softly, prayers hum through stone walls, ghost tales breathe down your neck. You wanted a quiet historical sleepover, but instead, you're caught between faith, superstition, and the lingering presence of centuries of souls who may or may not have left. You pull your blanket closer, whisper a small, awkward prayer just in case, and promise yourself you're not scared. But when another gust moans through the arrow slits and a torch flickers out somewhere far down the hall, your courage feels paper thin. By now, you've learned that castles aren't storybook palaces. Still, nothing quite prepares you for the slow, creeping reality of daily grime. You've already been cold. The first thing you notice is your own smell. You've only been here one night, but already your cloak reeks of smoke, damp wool, and animal fat from the tallow torches. Your hair feels greasy, your skin sticky. Medieval people didn't bathe often, sometimes just a few times a year, and even nobles didn't have hot running water. You might find a wooden tub if you're lucky, but filling it means hauling bucket after bucket, heating water over smoky fires, and hoping nobody else claims it first. Most folks just washed hands and face, maybe feet, and called it good. Then there's the floor. Those rushes straw scattered to keep things from getting muddy are more than rustic carpet. They're a living compost pile. People drop food scraps, spit, wipe greasy fingers, even let animals relieve themselves there. Herbs like lavender or mint get tossed on top to hide the stench, but they only do so much. Every step crunches and rustles, and you know beneath your boots lies months of filth. Your bed, if you can call it that, is just a straw mattress. At first, it felt better than bare stone. Now, you feel the damp creeping in. Straw collapses fast, turning lumpy and moldy. Fleas thrive inside. You wake scratching and cough from the dusty mix of hay and smoke. There are no sheets to change, no fresh pillowcases. People sometimes just added new straw over old, creating layers of dirt and pests. Clothes aren't fresh either. Laundry's rare because water is precious and soap expensive. Wool tunics trap sweat, smoke, and food smells until they become part of you. You can practically taste last night's mutton on your sleeve. Servants might beat clothes against stones and icy streams once in a while, but most outfits went unwashed for weeks. If you packed only one set, you're stuck marinating in your own history. Oddly enough, some castles had bathhouses or small steam rooms for lords and ladies, but common travelers like you, forget it. At best, you might warm a pot and sponge off behind a screen. Even then, no privacy. Servants could wander in, and your tub water would cool before you finished. You're suddenly nostalgic for your shower's steady stream of hot water. The air quality is brutal. Smoke from fireplaces and torches mixes with damp air, animal musk, unwashed bodies, and human waste. After hours of breathing it, your throat burns and your eyes sting. You cough quietly, hoping it's just irritation and not the start of some medieval chest infection. Remember, if you get sick, Section 80's nightmare medicine awaits. Your hands feel gritty all the time. Touch anything, the rough stone, wooden benches, your own blanket, and you pick up a layer of dirt and oil. There's no soap waiting in a neat dispenser. Maybe a servant will bring a bowl of cold water in the morning, but that's it. People ate with hands still sticky from chores, then wiped on clothes or the floor rushes. You suddenly miss hand sanitizer like an old friend. And then there's your teeth.